What's up, everybody? Hey, before we get going with this week's show, I just want to remind everybody about a couple of things. First of all, the new book, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, The Uncrowned King of Professional Wrestling, co authored by myself and Dangerous Doug Gilbert, is available now for pre order. You can order it at tinyurl.com/, Eddie Gilbert Book. And it's also available for pre order at Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, and all other reputable and respectable book retailers. Get it ordered today, and it will be shipping out on April the 26th. So go ahead and get those pre-orders in now, and it will be in your hands before you know it. Also, I want to remind everybody, besides the book coming out, Dangerous Conversations has returned right here on this very YouTube channel. You can catch Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich. It's going to be here each and every week. It's going to be dropping at midnight on Friday morning, Thursday night, if you will. And it'll be available here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, all your favorite podcast platforms. You can catch them there. You can find the links at DougGilbertPodcast.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel here and check out our Patreon at patreon.com/retro wrestling archive. All kinds of great content going on over there that you can't find anywhere else on the Patreon for the Retro Wrestling Archive. So please check out that book. We're very proud of it. I think you're going to like it. And for now, let's get going with this week's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back once again to Retro Wrestling here with Gene Jackson. And I am super excited about this week's episode. I've been working on getting this interview together with this gentleman for quite some time. I had to put the show on a bit of a hiatus so I could work on a couple of projects, but I didn't want to do this until I was thoroughly prepared and we had time to sit down and really get into his career. So right now, I want to welcome my guest this week. He is the man known as the one and only Hood Ninja, Hy-Zaya. Man, how is it going?
Hey, how you doing, man? Good to have you, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, rather.
Yeah, man, doing great. And I've been looking forward to this. I remember seeing you back in the IWA Mid-South days. I talked to our mutual friend, Izzy High, a.k.a. American Kickboxer, a.k.a. Frank. And I was telling him about how me and my little brother were big fans of JCW back in the day. We loved those tapes and seeing him against the Iron Sheik and then seeing you against Chris Hero or Piss Taco, as it were. But we'll get to that. We won't jump ahead just yet. But, man, you have had quite the wrestling career, and I kind of want to dip back I like to kind of get to the roots of things and kind of talk about, where your love of wrestling comes from, where you remember it beginning, back in the day.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. So, for those that don't know, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Louisville Gardens, made famous by USWA. WWE used to have a lot of their house shows here in your house, all that good stuff. So, here in Louisville, wrestling's a mainstay. My father's mother, my paternal grandmother, biggest wrestling fan I ever known. So pro wrestling has been such a thing, a part of my family since before I was born. And then just the love of it, man. Everybody says the love of it, But I'll say the dynamics of it. It was the place where I felt like I guess belonged, the land of the broken toys.
Yeah, man. That's I've got another podcast where we review old USWA wrestling. So USWA, all the old Memphis stuff's very, very near and dear to my heart. So that's cool to know that you grew up around the Louisville Gardens and was going to the shows there. Do you remember, maybe a particular wrestler or a match or an angle that sticks out in your mind as like where you went from being a fan of this, hey, this is something I want to watch, this is something I want to follow, to this is something I want to do. Like I want to be a wrestler. Is there anything that sticks out as the moment that kind of clicked for you?
Moments. Two different ones, I think. Just you asking like that, maybe even three. The kid part of me, before you're kind of smart to the business,
Yeah.
you like the characters, and the characters is what kind of draws you in before you kind of know the psychology in the wrestling. So as far as the characters, I can remember being really terrified, having to cross the street after the pay-per-view that they jump the Undertaker and empty the urn, and he goes flying up. I'm thinking like, man, he's gonna fly up and he's gonna see me running across the street. You're a kid, you don't know. You know what I'm saying? I used to love Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I the loved anybody from the dungeon. When I say the dungeon, like Stu Hart Dungeon in Calgary, Alberta, all the way from the odors of the hearts. You know what I'm saying? But of course, Brett made it famous. We grew up on Owen Hart, even Bruce back in the day. If you're old enough to remember him. But then, then you got the Chris Jerichos and the Benoit generations and the Lance Storms of the world that came through, and so it just seemed like that was as far as Canada and that kind of deal. To answer your question, man, but really, really, really cracked it was Scorpio.
All
Too
right.
Cold Scorpio, man. That was the first time that I've ever seen a brother that basically wrestled the way that I wanted to wrestle, that showed us in a light other than the big bruiser or the big guy that can't really speak, or the Ugandan giant or something. This was a brother that could move and that was doing things well before his time. So yeah, I would have to say any of his matches in early WCW days. And I didn't really know anything about indies. I just figured it was all, I never knew what guys were doing outside of TV when I wasn't smart to the business.
Right. That's really cool to hear, man, because I was such a big fan of Too Cold Scorpio. Like, he's one of the guys that when I finally got a chance to meet him years and years later, I was just like, this is a dude I never thought I would get to meet. And I just remember telling him, like, man, you know, Flying Brian and different guys like that was cool, but Scorpio was just another level. It seems so effortless for him. You know what I mean? Like the way he would just fly through the air and execute those moves, it was just second nature. And I always looked forward to seeing his matches, and got to see him live on some WCW house shows in Tupelo over the years, and just really cool to finally when I did finally get to meet him. And I don't know. I love hearing like when people, because most people are always like, yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage or something. That's cool. I mean, he's
Yeah,
awesome.
for real.
But somebody like Scorpio, man, that's really cool to hear that he was, the guy
Oh,
that
bro,
kind
yeah,
of
it was definitely an influence because you got to think too. If you had anybody that got a hold of Japanese tapes back in the day, trading tapes was the thing, and so you see the guys like the great Sasuke and guys do Michinoku, and you
yeah.
see everybody doing all these things. So it was dope to see somebody that looked like me. I guess of course I ain't gonna lie, I thought like, man, Martin Lawrence done got big and jumped into wrestling. No, I'm just playing. But now, kind of going back to what you were saying, meeting him was a totally different thing. I honestly was more taken back the fact that it felt like how I wanted to feel like. Like, man, I felt like I've known this brother all my life. Like, or that's how I want to come off to, maybe if a cat or young guy sees me like that, I want to come off like that to him. And he really is the coolest, man. And I think he's technically outside of chronological years, man. He's a lot younger than most people give him in his heart. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool to hear too, man, because a lot of guys, they grow up fans and they look up to these wrestlers and everything, but then when they get in it, it becomes a business and it becomes their job, and they kind of forget what those moments mean to people when they finally get to meet their hero that they grew up watching. And, I know a lot of people get disappointed, meeting that person that they've looked up to since they were a small child. They finally meet him like, yeah, man,
Not
he
for
was kind
real.
of an asshole. Like he really didn't have
Mhm.
time for me. So I love that, you keep that in mind as you meet fans now and remember,
Oh
hey, this
yeah.
is, this is what it was like for me to meet the guy I grew up watching. I want to give people that same feeling when they meet me, because there's somebody that's going to be sitting on a podcast, probably already is, when that's somebody's going to ask them, hey man, who was your inspiration? And be like, man, I saw this dude Hy-Zaya on the IWA Mid-South show back in the day, and that's when I knew this is what I wanted to do. So
Man, that's
that's
crazy to think about somebody saying that, but hypothetically speaking, I mean, you never know. You kind of forget how old you are in the business. There's guys that watched you grow up, or that's you watched grow up from the crowds that you don't even know. Talking about Scorpio and guys that you've seen, kind of backtrack on that a little bit, man. Absolutely. JCW kind of gave me a complex. We wasn't really. It was kind of a rule. You're there to make a name, and to you, you're nobody, and you're seeing all these stars, celebrities outside of TV's guests, and
yeah,
what they don't want you to do is embarrassing them, acting like a fanboy or just marking out too much. And so,
yeah,
we had to learn how to carry at a very young age, how to learn to carry myself. They called it no hounding then. So I didn't really hound the guys, but it's dope to kind of come across Vanilla Ice again to be like, hey man, you remember me? He was like, hey, and just like I don't know how he remembered me, but because of them, because of the platform, you see what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so it makes it dope. He's another one that you meet somebody that you've seen on TV and stuff like that. I'm like, man, I wish I didn't meet that guy's ass. Man, Vanilla Ice was the shit. He was so cool. It seemed like anybody that came through the JCW guys was kind of humble and cool. Waka Flocka,
yeah,
MGK, and not to name drop, these guys' guests, but to come
yeah.
around us and sometimes have to be in the same locker room in the same area, definitely got to know how to conduct yourself, or you can be up out there quickly.
Absolutely. And the fact to hear that those guys are cool, they weren't like, oh, it's just these are the damn wrestlers over here, like they treated y'all with respect too. That's good to hear. Because a lot of times that's
Absolutely.
not the case. I know I'm sure at some point you've ran across a few that wasn't the case, but back to what we were saying a minute ago about, influencing people and being probably somebody's reason for wanting to do this. When I talked to Kickboxer, and I know you probably refer to him as Frankie, but just for the sake of people
I
listening to
call
this who don't
him.
necessarily,
Everybody calls him Uncle Frank. I call him Miyagi-san. That's kind of like that's kind of
yeah,
our thing. He's always been sensei, but been blessed enough that we see each other as equals in a way. But I still give him that regard. As
yeah,
sensei and the father of the business, and we talk to each other every week, bro. And I love that we always constantly renew our mind frames and stuff and our rapport with each other.
he's such a cool guy, man, and
Mm.
and he's really humble. Like when I talked to him, it was like, man, you were one of the guys on the indie scene that really, brought this style that became prominent in the indies. Like you were one of the first guys to really bring that, to the indie level. I mean, you had these guys, like you said, Japan tapes, and you had top
Hmm.
level guys like Scorpio and Liger and Pillman, but like on the indies, like he was one of the first guys that was out there doing this. Like you could go to a house show in Louisville and be like, "Oh my God, they're doing some
Yeah.
wild stuff down there. We got to go see this," type thing, And then,
No, absolutely. One of the things that me and my boys used to care about that too, Gene, was like, you got to see right back in those days. It was WCW when they had the cruiserweight divisions, and
yeah,
so this was your way of seeing like him, Tarek the Great, him and Suicide Kid, him and Tyron, him and let's say at the time like Twiggy Mirez at the time, or Reckless Youth. Oh my God, how can you
yeah,
not? Another pioneer of this style of wrestling and whatnot. And those are the guys you got to see intimately up close and in person do that very same thing and kind of kick that door in and pioneer that style, man. It was dope. Like you just brought back a whole plethora of feelings, just kind of get back in that mode again. Yeah.
oh, we're gonna bring a lot of those in this, and I got a bunch of names to talk to you about throughout this. I think it's gonna stir up some memories and feelings. But before we
Mhm.
get to that though, let's talk about, once you do get that bug and you decide, hey man, I want to do this. What was your first move? Like, who did you reach out to? Where did you go to try to find out about how do I train to learn to do this?
Oh my goodness. So when I didn't have access anymore to like say the Louisville Gardens or OVW was actually across the bridge in Jeffersonville in Indiana on Mechanic Street at the time before they was at High Point Davis Arena where we currently are now.
Mhm.
It was IWA Mid-South. And of course, you don't know about the business, but it's like I remember they had some troubles, kind of shut down. I'm like, man, I'm not going to be able to be a wrestler. Thought that was my chance. Um, Bad to the Bone Wrestling, RIP Joe Bailey, used to run out of Kentucky. As a matter of fact, I just spoke to a man by the name of Dale Bass, who's really prominent here in this area and for a long time in the wrestling business. And I believe we were just talking. He is license number one. Dale Bass is,
Wow.
and one of the guys that watched me grow up, and I kind of broke in with through IWA because they had combined, I guess at the time, with BBW, Bad to the Bone Wrestling,
Mhm.
and I come straight from the crowds, man. I come straight from the IWA crowds. Of course, we did some seminars. Of course, a lot of people don't talk about it. I'm not about to go on an end bashing kind of thing. I actually say something pretty positive, really. Back when we were young kids, when I say young kids, 15, 16 years old, trying to make our way to B Pro, we used to do seminars. We ran out the ring. And some of that, we were charged, had to sign the waivers, parents'
Yeah.
permission slip for those of us young enough. And, we hit those seminars, we stuck around, we brown nosed and we coattailed until, hey, like you want to come train. And unfortunate enough that I had an attitude then. I was in high school, didn't know where I belong, kind of going through things back in the hood at home or whatnot. And so, kids at that adolescent age, they need those outlets, and wrestling was that outlet. Um, that attitude kind of caused me a little bit in the beginning of not knowing the etiquette. You don't have no training, you don't have no guidance. And you think because you got a few moves and you can make a crowd pop, like you can kind of call your shots, and that's just not how it goes. And I learned very quickly, yeah, that's not how the business goes, kid. And so I knew I needed to be trained, or somebody was going, I don't know about, I'm gonna watch my language. I was gonna be trained, or somebody's gonna mess me up. I had to learn a few things, and I could just remember Tarek and Kickboxer standing out. I always kind of seen them as like the I'm kind of a nerd, so I make a lot of video game and uh, Marvel and Star Wars references, bro. So you just got to bear with me. But I kind
I
of
got
seen those. I kind of seen those two as like a Ryu and Ken, a Street Fighter. And then
All right.
I knew that they had a legacy being trained by Les Thatcher. So I wanted to be trained by somebody who actually had a pedigree, and kind of had that to live up to, or at least be trained from. That way I could, build some respect. And luckily enough, he was cool enough to test me. Kickboxer would like test me, see if I'll show up certain places, and nothing too crazy, just to see if I had heart first before he
Yeah.
wasted his time, investing and putting into me. I'm grateful.
Yeah. You slipped in before, like when it's still, you had to kind of, I don't know. It got to where after, a little past that just any and everybody was out there training people. And so,
Oh no, it
they was out
wasn't
there
like
taking
that at
people's
all.
money.
Like,
So you got in when people like, it was pretty easy to find somebody that knew their stuff. Like, but if you couldn't navigate your way, if you didn't know any better, you had
mm,
all these guys trying to like money grab that hadn't been anywhere, hadn't done anything, and they're taking guys' money and they're not teaching them. They're not teaching them how to work, and you had all this big rash of like awful, awful stuff.
wrong side of the guardrail is what
Yeah.
Tracy Smothers used to say.
So you were lucky to have somebody that knew what he was doing to train you, and then of course you had an in with him. But you said a name there that's on my list, so let's go ahead. Tell me your
Okay.
earliest memories of Tracy Smothers.
My earliest, what? I'm sorry.
Your earliest memories of Tracy Smothers, like
Oh, I
meeting
couldn't
him.
stand it. I couldn't stand his ass. I could not. I couldn't stand his ass, especially as a kid. I didn't know about the gimmicks and such, and I'm just seeing some guy in a Confederate flag, and just he's a wild out Southern boy. He used to come out to this song, "The South would have won, would have had it made." I'm like, man, I don't like this dude at all. Like, what? I don't understand the deal here. How are
Yeah,
people letting this happen? You're not smart. But
yeah,
broke into the business. Again, those early days is watching him on TV. That's when I didn't like him. Meeting him and then getting to know him, like he was actually one of the first I don't know, man. He has had this thing where he can just switch you. Like he does that with people with his reaction. He just had this magic about him where if he didn't want you to like him, you won't. If he wanted you to get behind him, you will. And I can just remember being behind him one night, late night, Thursday night wrestling, school night for me, and watching him put it down in the main event. And I just remember shaking his hand. He had this look in his eyes, like he always had this look in his eyes, even if he didn't know you. You shook your hand, you felt like one of these, like, oh man, that dude's cool. I like him. I didn't know by the end of it that he would end up being another father of the business, which is very fortunate, which he is to a lot of us. He has a lot of kids, different colors and stuff. Pops got around. Uh, but those early days, man, he was he was like a foundational piece, bro. As you kind of got older or whatnot, you kind of realize like, yeah, he might be the Yoda of this thing here. You might want to, what I'm saying, everything kind of, and he knew how to keep up with stuff. He remembers stuff from like when you were, it took me 10 years. We had worked a few times, but it took me 10 years to go over on him in a match. I can remember that specifically because I always test to see if I was ready by who I got to work with and how. And him, the first time, you're in your head when you're working somebody, it's a name and you kind of overthink it. Second time, you think you're ready, and I'm not yet, kid, but you still think you're ready. Third time, it just clicked. And it wasn't even a wrestling match. I believe we were locked up in the corner, tussling around. He's asking me questions like, man, I've known you since you're about 16. I'm like, yes, sir. He breaks off, give me his deal, pop, 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 chops me in the neck, snap measures me, throws me in the headlock. And I'm like, okay, he's talking to me and stuff. He's trying to get me to relax so I don't overthink like the last couple times, I'm watching, I think his manager time, Derek Neal. He's calling spots to Derek Neal. He's saying something to the referee, working the crowd, getting a reaction. I'm sitting there, working up from a headlock, trying to get my fingers in between, but I'm also watching and listening to what he's doing. Like the light bulbs is clicking on. I was just like, okay, I'm starting to get this now. Work around and man, I don't know. Like I can say some other stuff because I don't want to put that out there, but just on a personal level, just because I'm a herbal therapist or such. But him and Gypsy Joe, man, two of my favorite and greatest OGs. That was a really big influence over my adolescence in the business.
Yeah, reread Tracy's book again recently, and
Mm,
you were included in that book, and he had some things in there, about you and from you in the book, and I was like, man, that's really cool. That's quite the endorsement, for
mhm.
Tracy to have you as a part of his book and everything, and it's something that'll be around forever. So,
Right.
definitely wanted to ask you about him, and besides breaking in those early stages of your career, besides Kickboxer and Tracy, who's some people that stand out to you as being helpful to you in your early days of your career?
Sexy Sean Casey. Shout out to Sean Casey, man. He was definitely one of them. In the really, really early days. Uh, younger days. Bull Payne.
Yeah.
Bull Payne was very instrumental. And honestly, let's see. Um, Man Pondo. Man Pondo, man, he's helped a lot of us, man. A lot of us wouldn't have had a name or kind of gotten out of some stuff or wouldn't have learned how to make money and stuff and got on down the road if it wasn't for him. Um, as far as those early days of really, really like taking you in and helping you. Um, Guys like Harry Palmer, Mark Wolf, Cash Flow, Too Tough Tony, like Necro Butcher. Like I had like I don't know, a rogue gallery of OGs at the time, that, they broke you in right. Like they were, they weren't gonna make it easy, but if you listen, you was decent enough, it scared the hell out of most people. But like you said, in those days, they wasn't just letting anybody in. They were weeding them out, and so you'll pay to rip the ring out, and they'll use your ring time that you paid for to practice moves on you, stretch you out, teach you a few things just to see if you come back.
Yeah.
You know, you come back, a few times you might be let in the locker room, might be let in the locker room a few times, might be let, taken on the road. So it was steps, it's a process, and you just had to have heart, man. That's that one thing that nobody can teach you. And if you ain't got heart and you stay in your feelings, you sell everything and wear your heart on your sleeves, you're not gonna make it very far.
And that's really the only way they can learn that about you and see if you have the heart. Really, the only way you can see if you have the heart is going through that stuff, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
Jackson, Tennessee, get ready for a night of non-stop laughs at Cody's Sports Bar and Grill. On May 10th at 7 p.m., we're bringing some of the best comedians in the area to the stage. Tickets are $10 at the door, but why pay more? Grab yours in advance for just $7 at codyscomedy.eventbrite.com. Great food, cold drinks, top-tier comedy. What more could you ask for? This event is 18 and over, so make sure you bring your ID and your best sense of humor. Comedy at Cody's Sports Bar and Grill, May 10th, 7 p.m. in Jackson, Tennessee. Be there.
I know I'm forgetting some people in my past that I should shout out, but just, if I could just, off the top of my mind, yeah.
And we may come across some of them here. Like I say, I got some notes about some different matches and different people you worked with. So you talked about starting out. You're a young kid. All of us, from any business, whether it's wrestling or just life, you think you got it all figured out. You think you know what's up, and then when it does finally click with you later, then that's when you realize, like, oh, I didn't know anything. Like I knew absolutely nothing. So, what misconceptions did you have about the wrestling business coming into it that you eventually realized, like, oh, this is nothing like that? Like I had this all wrong, or did you have a pretty good grasp on it coming in?
I think everybody thinks that they got a grasp on it coming in. I wasn't prepared for the level of pain you had to be ready to kind of build yourself with. Because, growing up and watching on TV, you think the ropes are actually ropes or rubber. You might think the ring's bouncy. Is okay, it's just sound. They have a microphone under the ring. I've never went through anything, I don't think, in life that puts your entire body to the test. So that was a really big misconception, and especially when I first started taking bumps. Yeah. I first started running the ropes, didn't know how bad it hurt to even run the ropes, And for a lot of people that don't know, WWE and a few of the higher companies actually use, the thick naval ropes, it looks like, and tighten down, which is why their ropes look a little looser. But most of the independent wrestling and rings or whatnot, some of my favorite rings are Mike Sample rings, by the way. I love his rings. They bump good. They're built well. I know how to put them together. I think all wrestlers know how to put the ring together. But, just that level of what these guys have to endure. Speaking of Tracy Smothers, he equated that every time we fall in the ring, it's equivalent of getting rear-ended in a car at 25, 30 miles an hour. And I can believe that. Especially, when you start to feel your bump card get a little wobbly.
Yeah, I've talked about that with some people over the years. Like, there's people that take a fall in life and then, never work again. They spend the rest of their life on like disability. And I'm like, there's guys that take 10 times worse bumps than that in the average match that everybody thinks just, oh, that old fake wrestling. Like, no, man, like, you know, they just don't know. I love that analogy. I've heard that before from Tracy, and that's a pretty good analogy, you know, to make somebody who's never been in the ring understand, you know, the impact of it. That's a great analogy.
I had to figure out, you don't really kind of get those things, you kind of pop in to say it like that, or unless you regurgitate it from somebody else. You don't really know, but you have to put your body through a nice amount of trauma. And not to say trauma, like, you know, but you definitely got to get, you know, you got to beat yourself up to build yourself up in this game a little bit.
Yeah,
I think that's
mean,
any sport.
It's not natural. Like, your body's not built to take that impact of just the average bump, just a flat back bump off a shoulder tackle. And then you start talking about coming off the top rope and getting, you know, a hurricane run off the top rope. I mean, it's a lot. And like you said, you build up a tolerance doing it repetitively. And that's what people don't understand too. Somebody takes a few months off because of an injury or something, and then they get back in there, and your body doesn't have that callus built up. Takes a while to get back in there.
Well, sometimes with that, man, you almost like, if you take a few months off, you'll start to hurt for no reason, certain spot, and have to do it in order not to hurt, in order to feel normal.
Yeah, and your average person can't even wrap their head around that. They're like, that don't make sense. But people have done it. You're like, yeah, I get that, man.
Yeah, man.
So in those early days in IWA Mid-South, you worked with a lot with Kickboxer. You worked with the Suicide Kid, the Prophet, Daniel Quinn, Paulie Smooth, and of course Tarek the Great. Tell me some memories of working with some of those guys in particular.
Oh gosh, so where do we start? I'll start with the Prophet Daniel Quinn, just because it's my day one. We literally came from the grassroots, from the crowd to the grassroots, from the backyard shows to training to getting broke in, all through together, man. And a debt of gratitude to that guy. See, you know, time that I kind of I've never got the benefit shows. I never told people if I was really hurt to pay for certain medical bills, if I did have medical attention or whatever. But I could just remember being gone from the business for a few years, and that guy just dragging me from under a rock back in 2009, 2010, and I haven't stopped since. So yeah, man. Daniel's somebody that, you know, we really kind of built our names with and off of each other, man. And those are the guys that you had back in those times. Chucky Smooth, Paulie Smooth. I always think of him when I see guys in a corner of a locker room, like the young guys in the corner of a locker room, not saying anything, because that was me and him. You know, even though he came through with the, even though he used to come through with we called him at the time the Go Bond Mafia, with the Dave Prazaks and the CM Punks and Ace Steel and Colt Cabanas and stuff. We still, us young guys, always kind of had our corner to where we had our own conversations. We wasn't, you know, back in those times, guys wasn't allowed to just run around the locker room, play, and tell war stories. There was a pecking order because there was a lot of OGs around back then. They can kind of, regulate that type of behavior. And Chucky Smooth is one of the guys I feel like I come up and grew up with as a contemporary in the locker room. He was a lot of fun, man. Wild child. And what was the other names? I know you said Tarek. I know you said
Suicide Kid.
Suicide Kid, man. That's my brother, man. He had just recently had a match that I cussed him out for taking, because for real, because, you know, I know how he is. He's still a kid at heart. And there's just no telling what he will do if you allow him the platform. But he done good, man. I know he probably slept for 3 days after trying to be young again. But, you know, shouts to Jake, man. He's, he's doing good. I believe he's like sober now, which is awesome. But he was I always refer to Suicide Kid when I tell young guys about a hero card. And people are not going to know what I'm talking about, but I always call the hero card is something that the people give you, the crowd gives you. It's not that something, it might say it factor in the business, but that doesn't mean the crowd's going to give you a hero card off the back of it. This is when you become not over, but adorned. I guess is the word I'm looking for. And he was the first one I seen that was just so adorned as the guy outside of, say, the USWAs and stuff like that, to be able to carry the torch as the baby face to get behind. You know, he was very instrumental in guys like myself. You know, I don't think that we would have the level of CM Punk at those times that we would have. Believe it or not, you know, this guy had a physical capability that was just out of this world. And was a really big influence in my life at the time, and contributed to the delinquency of my minorhood. But I won't go into detail, buddy.
There's always gonna be a few of those guys, right?
Oh yeah. I was the baby there. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about this gentleman with when I talked to Kickboxer, but tell me a little bit about Tarek the Great.
Oh man, Tarek the Great. Now you want to talk about somebody who had a lot of influence on me. I had a choice really. I was going to ask either one. I was going to ask at the time Kickboxer or Tarek. Kickboxer he was more of the Ken Masters, the cool long flowing hair guy. Kind of had this hippie vibe to him. You train high, you get high scores. That's not my quote. Tarek, same level, but he was more of the Ryu. He was more of the Ryu of the Ken and Ryu thing, and a bit more intimidating. And I can just remember the most about him. What stuck out, he would say something before the match, like he would just look at me, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's the look." Because like maybe I had this look in my eyes or something when I got into the zone that I didn't know I had at the time. He's like, "Oh, that's the look. Keep that." And he had this intensity about him. He had that. If I wrestled Tarek, I knew I was going to get headbutt a few times, or it was going to hurt a lot more than the average match with somebody else. But he liked it there. And he was one of the ones that really, really toughened me and calloused me up for anything, for real, for real.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Like with him and Kickboxer, there was a balance there. They were two different types, but they fit together perfect. Like against each other, they were absolutely perfect. But it's kind of that yin and yang thing, and everybody, or if you're lucky, I can say everybody, but if you're lucky, you find those people throughout your career and do some cool things with them. One of the first major championships you won was the IWA Mid-South light heavyweight title, a title you had gone to win 7 or 8 more times. But what did it mean to you personally that very first time that you won it there in Charlestown, Indiana?
My heart dropped. It did. It did. And I think you talk about Daniel Quinn and guys like that. We all had the same circle of homies, and those crowds that felt the same way. Like one of ours had gotten that. Like it was just kind of unheard of. I lost it that same night to Izzy High. American
That was my follow-up question. Was going to be the obvious follow-up question. How did you feel when you lost on the same card 2 matches later?
Yeah, I think a few matches later, Mr. Miyagi beat me up and took it. But man, it was an awesome ride home. It solidified me to me, I took it as like, okay, I had this title. It meant that I was one of the Tareks, one of the Kickboxers, one of the, Suicide Kids, one of the, J Prodigies, RIP, I don't know. It wasn't about the belt, but the title, and to have that title at such a time and be so young, I think that was like my second weekend. So I had no complaints. I was just happy that I wasn't going to get, the treatment that I was told I was going to get in our first meeting of being hired in. So that was cool. And I love the fact that I was respected as a hardcore, even though I wasn't quote a death match wrestler, that I was still able to turn up, still able to hold my own weight, man. That meant the world to me. That first one definitely meant the world to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I knew it had to, like, to be the show that, you watched and then to be able to hold that title. You'd seen so many people hold that title and to be able to hold it yourself. And then, to be able to turn around and drop it to your mentor. Nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, that's
no, we were just actually recently talking about that. I went up to visit him and we were just talking about it, 'cause I was like, I never knew who had if him or Tarek had the top one, and we had spoken, think that Tarek is the number one and then him, as far as who's had those titles the most. But a lot of us, even myself, I've modeled a lot of what I do based on Tarek and Kickboxer's feud, with my partner. with my best friend and me, Shane Mercer. And so, we modeled ourselves off of that. And a few of us have, man, a lot of this and a lot of our knowledge is either from experience or just something that we've regurgitated, that we've applied, that we applied from somebody else, man. Blaze those scrolls and learn.
Absolutely. I think there's something to be said for what you were talking about earlier about being those young guys in the locker room that's over in the corner listening to all these vets, all these guys that's been there and was currently doing it. I go in locker rooms now and most of them guys won't shut the hell up. You got the vets sitting over in the corner just like, look at these guys. Look at these clowns.
Oh, man. I was always afraid of that, boss. Yeah, I was always afraid of that. I never want to be one of those guys that had the names looking across the room, just shaking his head, rolling his eyes like, oh, what a bunch of goofs. Did not want to be a goof. I learned about pecking order really quickly. And how to conduct myself in the locker room and on the road. So I was not a goofball.
We talked about that on another podcast recently, that a lot of people, like a lot of fans and stuff, don't realize that being labeled a goof in the locker room amongst wrestlers is like top tier, like worst things you can be called. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it sounds like harmless. Goof. But no, you get labeled a goof. That's a hard one to shake, right?
No, man, I think about Goof Troop. I think about Goof Troop, and then I think about a whole legion of Goof Troop, like stormtroopers, is a bunch of goofies. That's what it makes me put in mind of. But yeah.
So as I'm going through your matches and your history to kind of refresh my memory for this interview, numerous times in the year 2000, you worked with a wrestler named Uncle Honky. Tell me about Uncle Honky, because that sounds like an interesting dude.
I refer to him as the Don. Shout out to Don Brody. I hated that name. I hated that gimmick, but it worked. At those times, especially in 2000, I was 18, 19 years old. I had no say so or anything. But we made it work. And he ended up becoming like an uncle to me, I didn't know where he come from at the time. I just knew that me and Richard X, who was my tag partner at the time, shout out to Richard. I guess we needed something extra. And I think around that time that Ian was trying to make us kind of do like a more of a militant black gimmick, kind of, on the edge of racial stuff. And I really didn't like it because I kind of knew I was in the sun downtown anyway. And being called the hard R every week, just, I don't know, it just wasn't my level of heat. Yeah. But Uncle H came around. That's what I called him. I didn't want to call him Uncle Honky or whatever. Like, hey man, I'm just gonna call you Uncle H. I don't want you calling me nephew. Nah. So we just gone. Nah.
We'll call a truce on that one, and this will be.
Yeah. But you know what he did do? He used to. So he wore these bib overalls, and Ian always wanted me to say these racial things to the crowd. So I found a way around it by doing what he asked without necessarily doing what he wanted. And so Uncle H would have these bibs and would carry me out on his shoulders with the light heavyweight title. And I would have a stack of saltines in his pocket that I would just toss out like ninja stars to the crowd instead of saying it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gave the edge. And I wasn't a very good bad guy then. I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's one thing to get heat based off of what you're doing in the ring and everything. But when they try to play like racial angles, and it's like, all right, I don't need a bunch of people hollering at me just because of my race. Like, that's not
it's just uncomfortable. It takes you out of it. It takes you out of it, and it makes your crowd uncomfortable. Even the people who ain't black that has to hear that, it makes them uncomfortable too, because it's like, all right, we came from the wrestling, and yes, we're trying to suspend reality, but the triggering effect sometimes could turn a crowd into a mob real quick, man. Yeah.
Wrestling's supposed to be fun, man. We're coming there to forget all the bullshit and everything, and to bring that kind of stuff into it. That ain't fun for anybody. You know what I mean? Even if people don't feel that way, it reminds them of a time that wasn't fun for anybody when people did feel that way. And it's just like, let's just all that.
Now, around your own peoples, I'll be the first one to tell you, man, we got a carload and, a few brothers and a few redheads. We call ourselves ninjas and gingers. And, it just got a ring to it. You know what I'm saying? But like, you have good people you got rapport with, but hood passes ain't universal. No matter who stamps it. And I think it's important that our white friends in the business do see color, though. I don't think many people want to say it like that, but I think it's important, Gene, that like I want you as a person to see color, so that way we know what the marginalized people feel like, but we still have the rapport to treat each other as men. That's one thing I loved about Kickboxer. He wasn't just gonna, Frank was not gonna just raise no shucking and driving brother in this business. He made a point to let me know that you're going to be respected as a man before they see you as a black man, before they see you as anything. And I love that and respect him about him, to this day. He wasn't just trying to create a wrestler. He wanted to create a decent man. And hopefully I came out all right.
Oh, for sure. And I totally get what you're saying there. And I think that is important to see color in that aspect. But as far as like the playing things for heat and everything, like, I don't think it's cool to create a situation where it gives fans a pass. We're like, oh, I was calling him that, but that's just his gimmick, right? That's what I'm supposed to say. It's like, all right, now you're hiding behind that. Like,
now don't get me wrong, I do like an old fashioned New Jack Riot. That's just in me. I can't help it.
Or those old Jamie Dundee, Corinth, Mississippi throwdowns.
I don't refer to him too much. I'll leave it. I mean, we all right, but Jamie's the reason he's the reason for my knife wielding in the business.
You and Bill Dundee both. No, Wolfie, I guess that Roar started that, but yeah. His name often can grind interviews to a halt. So I throw that out there.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say any bad thing. We've had our moments, man. We had our moments. I'll give shouts to we've had our words. We've had our differences. But I still, hit him up when Miss Beverly had passed. He sent me a message, you just gotta know. When you're one of the boys, you know what you're dealing with. So let's just say like, guys like him, Wolfie D, plenty, they pioneered this area before we was ever around. So respect, all the way when it comes to the wrestling portion. As men, that's our individual rapport. We don't have to make it out there, personally in the business. It just is what it is. Thanks for the knives, though.
Towards the end of 2000, you had one of your first matches with a guy that you've kind of been forever linked to. I referenced in the beginning of the interview, Chris Hero. And he's a guy that's, had a good career in wrestling as well. Tell me what you remember about, those early days working with Chris Hero. And did you get the impression back then that he would go on and do some of the things he's done?
As far as his talent, absolutely. We had kind of like me, we were developing. I don't think I was picked on as much as he was with the boys a little bit, but I think because he took it well and he was a good sell. Like, he didn't take it personal. He had hard skin. I remember Pat Tanaka's wife slapping the shit out of us at the time over a three-way that she had thought that maybe we had hit him too hard. As a matter of fact, she kind of got us, shook her hand like, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, okay, yeah, man, nice to meet you." You hurt my husband, you son of a bitch. I'm sitting there like this.
She drew you in.
Pat's looking at me like, that's just her. Don't say nothing. I'm like, oh, I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm gonna step back and watch Chris get his. I step back, watch Chris come through the door like, hey, everything all good, Pat? Yeah. I want you to meet my wife. Bow, gives him one. He looks at me. I'm like, don't ask me nothing. But we were on. You talk about JCW, man. We were on tour together. That second one, Stranglemania Live, I think. I love that guy. He's taught me a lot, especially in years after that, especially before he went up to NXT. He came and visited areas and, gave me the rub. And even when he came back, in the later IWA days, just kind of confirming and pull me to the side, man, just like, just letting you know, you definitely become a ring general and stuff like that. So as things progressed and things like that, he would always let you know, give roses, where it's due. His technical wrestling skills, man, I have to say is up there with anybody's.
Yeah.
That's fundamentals and his knowledge. I can remember a few Lance Storm scrolls he gave me, just from knowledge and just talking to him, man, and watching him transform. As a matter of fact, holy shit, excuse my language, I'm I'm kind of an action figure flea market and survivalist junkie when it comes to looking for stuff. And I seen a Cassius Ono in the case, in the actual package, unopened, going for $150.
Hey, now
And so, yeah, I would say bro's doing good for himself. You know,
exactly. That's a
when the
good
collector market's got you up there like that, yeah.
That's a good measuring stick of if you're over or not. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask this, and I understand that, you know, you're all grown and this is you know what you're signing up for with JCW. But so what's it like when you go back and you watch JCW Volume 2 and you hear the commentary and he's getting called Piss Taco and you're Hy-Zaya Thomas and you trained to wrestle, reading the wrestling magazines at Walgreens, all the silly stuff.
Yeah, like people really thought I worked at Arby's, man. People really thought I worked at Arby's. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you something messed up, and I don't know how to fix it, but I ended up getting an IMDb credit for being a celebrity on one of those shows that I was not. But I'll just leave it at that.
I can imagine who
I'll
that
just
was.
leave it at that. That was funny. It's funny now. It wasn't funny then because I'm thinking like, oh, my career's over, man. They just roasted me. I ain't shit, you know. But it was dope. But then at the very same time, though, that was the first time I was ever on a DVD. And to have your name and you're on this match in the DVD, no telling how many times I watched that scratched up thing before it wouldn't work no more. Just because you're on a DVD. And then years later, you had said this old classic word. Somebody actually had me sign the VHS tape of that JCW Volume 2. So that let me know that, yeah.
I've got that sitting on a rack over there in my room. And believe me,
I see you looking at it, man.
If I ever get the opportunity to meet you in person, you'll be signing a second one, I promise.
I got you, man.
And if I ever meet Chris Hero, he's going to have to sign Piss Taco on there. I'm sure he's
there's one of those guys talking about meeting in person. Chris is one of those guys you want to meet and talk to in person, for real. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You would not be disappointed. Any fan would not be disappointed in meeting him in person, from what I'm, from my perspective.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Sheik, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
I have to say that now one of my new favorite stories that's ever been told this podcast is you and Chris Hero getting Rick Jamesed by Pat Tanaka's wife. That's just tremendous.
Oh yeah, yeah. I even felt a few little tingles as I said it, just residualing over, man. I couldn't believe it. You just didn't know it was coming. Everybody was congratulating us, telling us about this good match, and here you go, shake his hand, and here this lady comes with this right hand.
Oh, that's wild, man. So on December 16th, 2000, you won the IWA light heavyweight title once again from a guy that I consider to be just absolutely criminally underrated, one of the most talented guys of his day who should be talked about and studied a whole lot more than he is. And I'm talking about Todd Morton. Have you got any fun stories about Todd Morton?
Man, so I'm glad you said that. I need to actually call him. He is somebody I consider like an unk in the business, man. Him and Bull Payne are very instrumental as far as influence with me and the Iron Demon Shane Mercer. We bring them up all the time. There's probably not a wrestling trip that his name isn't brought up. I hope he knows that, and I hope other guys are doing it too, man. You're talking about another influential pioneer of this area, who helped bring up and develop The Rock before he was The Rock, in his Flex Kavana days, and somebody who knew how to get some good heat. Somebody knew how to lay them punches in. Hey, Todd, remember? Yeah. What stuck out that I feel like I learned from him the most, because I learned from him more or less inside matches. Yeah. We have stuff to where he talked to you and stuff, and of course he see Chucky Smooth doing something in the corner of the locker room to come over. What the fuck are you doing, kid? Why we ain't doing shit? But Todd was, he was a locker room general to us. And as far as like talking about his career, like from when I've known him to to now, we've become family. A lot of wrestlers, we're not as close as we like to be, don't speak all the time, but I hold him to a pedestal in high degree. Anytime I've ever gotten in trouble or something controversial, he's one of the first of a few to hit me up, talk me through it, make sure I'm not in my head about it. Yeah, man, I can go all day just talking about how good he was to me. Outside those, those trading punches, he wanted to make sure I was laying them in, so he laid them in to make sure I hit his ass back. He was something else, man.
Yeah, somebody lays them in on you, it's hard not to lay it in back.
I was like, all right, I guess he wants to fight. Oh, yeah.
Hey, if anybody's listening to this that knows Todd Morton, I'd love to interview Todd Morton. So
I will listen. I will send him a text when we up off here. I really will. I got you.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. So he's talking about JCW and so how were the ICP guys? What were those tours like? Those Juggalo crowds are pretty wild, right? I mean, it had to be a different experience.
Oh man, so
average wrestling fan.
You talk about the mob. I thank goodness that I grew up in IWA, so I was good with a mob mentality crowd. But it's not until you hit like the East Coast or up in Detroit or certain areas to where it's like, oh, it's a sink or swim. They will eat you alive if you're not on your shit. And excuse my language. I don't mean but
we can say anything. We can say anything on here, man. It's all good.
Okay. I was like, man, I know it's ain't pepper box or nothing, but nah, man, very intimidating. I can remember that tour, particularly around that time. That's when they used to throw shit in the ring. It can be anything from pieces of metal, coins, cups of piss. If you had to be ready. You can get on the top rope. Somebody's threw a cup of beer or something on there, and slip off, damn near break your neck. I actually, matter of fact, on that tape, I slipped trying to do a move to Chris. About killed myself, I believe. Like trying to do a little tilt-a-whirl or whatever those things are called anymore. But yeah, man, it was it was unpredictable. As far as ICP was concerned, I never got the impression of being treated badly or nothing. If anything, I say for that age and being a nobody, I got treated great. Yeah. you know, in those years, I think when they did that tour, I had turned 20 on the road. Like it was my birthday on the road that year. And so it was dope, even though, like, again, I wasn't old enough to drink, but nobody knew what I was doing. You know, I was on the road, you know, ignoring pages from my grandmother at the time to check in. And yeah.
Back when we were getting pages, that's good times.
Oh yeah. Me and Chris Hero used to be in the back of the tour bus, man, and he had brought a PlayStation. I brought my Nintendo 64. I think we had some retro gaming, and we sat in the back lounge and just game while we on the road. All the old school games. I think we played a lot of hockey together when those sports games was good back in the day. Yeah.
Man, you talk about those Juggalo crowds, and then, you know, we was talking about Tracy Smothers earlier. For friends of mine who aren't even wrestling fans, I have popped in the DVD of just that fan, like Tracy battling those fans, like especially before that R-Truth match at the one gathering. It's just something to behold, man. Like he doesn't give 1 ounce of a damn. I mean, he's out there just talking all the trash you can, and I mean, and if all them drunken nuts decided to hit the ring, there really would be nobody could have stopped him. He didn't care. He had that damn stick, and he's just batting that shit back
Tracy
at
was
him.
smart. Tracy was smart, man. He would have plants out there, so he would have us in our street clothes sometimes just kind of popped out there, especially if he's going to fight outside the ring. So he wasn't stupid.
Okay,
he had his contingency plans. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, because I worried about him watching some of the stuff. I was like, man, I was like, I know Tracy's wild. I've been around him quite a bit, but it's like, whoo, that's something else. But yeah, I love that he'd have that stick with him, and he just start hitting them things like baseballs, just knocking the shit back at him, you know. And he threw the stick out into the crowd, like just hurled it out in the crowd.
And that was his main stick, you know. As he kind of got older and whatnot, and you know, things start to set in. His hips and his knees was bothering him, so he would use it to walk around. But man, you know, he charge up, get in that ring and do his thing.
That's crazy, man. I saw him on a Game Changer show in Nashville. Probably when it wasn't about a year and a half or 2 years before he passed. And me and my wife was there, and on the intermission, you know, because she'd asked me on the way there, she's like, who all's wrestling tonight? And I was like, you know, this person, that person, Tracy Smothers and all that. And so we're sitting there, and she looked up, and here come Tracy, like coming across there with that walking stick. She's like, I thought you said Tracy's going to wrestle tonight. And I'm like, he is. And she's like, he's walking with a walking stick. There's no way he's going to wrestle. And sure enough, he come out there with that stick, that bell rang, and he wrestled Spider Nate Webb. And
man, see, that was another one of his guys, another one of his kids, man. Yeah.
But he's out there in Nashville now. It's his, you know, basically his hometown. So it's like, boy, he's gonna have an uphill battle to be getting heel heat here in Nashville. Hey, 2 minutes on that microphone, they were booing him out of the building. Nate comes out, you know, got a couple of good lines in, and he was blown heel. He had his daughter out there with him, you know, and he said a few things that just, you're like, okay, yeah, that's
yeah. But, and you know what's crazy about Tracy? He'll turn babyface in the middle of the match on you, and they'll go for it, and then he'll turn right back on them. And he might do it, you know, depending on how he feels, man. He just had this high level force ability. I just have to make a Star Wars reference again. You know, he was Yoda, man. He knew how to use the force. He knew how to use psychology. He knew how to use his tools in the ring, man. He was the best.
I seen him on a bar show. I seen him on a bar show in Tupelo right off of his Freddie Joe Floyd run in WWF. He was still wearing the green gear and all that. And he came out before intermission and made a save for somebody and did a big babyface promo. And then he went over there at intermission, sold a ton of pictures, took pictures there by in the bill, and made him a bunch of money. And then the very next match after intermission, he come out there and ran in the match and attacked the top babyface, beat the hell out of him, and then cut a heel promo. And now that I got all you rednecks money, I can tell you how I really feel. And he was the biggest heel on the show for the rest of the night. I love it.
Man, that's it. That sounds like him, man. That's crazy. He pulled the ultimate ninja vanish on me one time. I'm usually the guy, so I'm kind of known amongst the boys to, like, in real life, Batman the hell out of people. Like, they'll be talking to me and then turn, look, and I'm just gone. Well, we were at they used to have back when I was invited to the Heroes and Legends shows at the time, and they would have, you know, kind of its own convention. His table was next to me at Mercer's. I'm like, hey man, they kind of concessions over there. You want to have a beer? He's like, oh man, I love that Hy-Zaya. Yeah, please get me one. So I figured we have a couple of beers. Well, about 5 beers later, or so, I happen to look up and I say, Shane, where'd Tracy go? Like, where's Pops? He's like, I don't know. He was just right here. And then next thing you know, we get word that he's been escorted out of the building because he went over to the side where Ric Flair was and going to fight him over something that happened back in the day he never got his, revenge off of. And I never see Tracy again the rest of that day until the next show that he told me about it. But man, and I was specifically remembering as we were having a couple of sips, and that's why I loved him. He told me he loved me because of my attitude, of how fire I was, how passionate I was. And our birthdays are like right there next to each other. So we kind of understood each other on the same level when it comes to that fire, man. And I miss him, man. I'm glad you're bringing up a lot of these stories because, other than the boys, nobody would know these things. And some of these qualities that, you might get out of some of the characters and some of the people you come across in the business, man.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. And I like your story with Tracy is a really cool story because, like, you grew up not liking him. You had this perception of him, and then you meet him, you get to know him, and then you guys have this huge mutual respect. And it's just kind of a lesson for people listening to this. Like, you just never know about people till you get to know them, until you learn what they're really all about. Because these wrestling personas are just that. They're just a persona. It's either playing out there in the ring. And I know like some of the most notorious scumbags character-wise in wrestling are some of the best people I've ever met. And some of the people who play really, really good guys are some of the biggest pieces of shit you'll ever meet in your life. So, you just have to meet people and figure that out on your own, unfortunately, about a lot of them. And sometimes it works out good, like Tracy, and sometimes it don't.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. I had said on the podcast before, one of the biggest things in wrestling of being portrayed as a babyface, you're not always a babyface in real life. I don't think no man's always ever a babyface in real life, but nobody wakes up to say, I want to be a piece of shit. You know what I'm saying? But we all have our moments, but you have people that in every group, any, race, creed, color, demographic, you have your decent people, you got your assholes. And you got people that walk the line. Some of us have learned off our mistakes. Some of us have learned remorse and actually, changed behavior and went within and did the work to become a better person and not a piece of shit. So you don't feel like you're an actor when you happen to be a baby face, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so, yeah, man, this business can't do that to you, especially if your ego don't get checked. And that's the one thing that's unfortunate about some of it, which it's coming around a little bit. There's not many OGs as there was to kind of regulate that. But now some of us are looking around like, I think that might be us now to do that.
You wake up one day, and I've heard that from a lot of guys who are like, I got to looking around like, man, there's not any vets left. There's not any vets left. And then suddenly somebody told me like, dude, you're the vet. It's you. It's you now. And then you wonder like, all right, back in the day, were those guys that I looked up to and that I seen that way, did they not see themselves that way? Probably not,
Right. You ever grow up thinking yourself outside of wrestling? Like, man, you get grown, you're like, there ain't no way this is adulthood. Like, where are the grown-ups for real? Like, where are the real grown-ups at, man? Like, what? This is it? Like, my grandparents and parents really didn't know shit for real. They were playing me guinea pig the whole time.
Absolutely, man. I talk about that. I just turned like 47 a while back, and it's like, I always thought I'd have this perception, or that I'd really have a real perception of getting older, and I would change, and how I felt about things and how I saw things would change, but it hasn't. Like, I just realized like, oh shit, I'm that guy now, and I don't even know how this happened or how we got here, but but I don't feel it.
That maturity sets in, man. I'll tell you what, that maturity sets in. I just had a colleague of mine I do security with. He's an older guy that I work with, and he straight up told me, he was just like, man, you think you get older, like you look at things like, no, we still think that we're 20 something in our head, especially as men. We still think that we're 20 something in our head until we try to go do some 20-year-old shit. And then it's like, we're gonna have to need a couple days to get over this, bro.
You got to get out of bed the next day, and you're nope, not 20 anymore, man. Man,
Yeah,
this has
man.
flown by, dude. Like, I haven't got through half the stuff I want to talk to you about. If it's cool with you, man, I'd love to have you back in the future. And let's.
I would love to be back, bro. I love your level of questioning, bro. Seems bro, like I mean, you know a lot about it, and would love to kind of get into more with you, man. If you have me, absolutely.
Oh man, absolutely. But before we go, though, the reason I would want to cut it off here is, man, you're doing a lot of cool, important stuff beyond just wrestling and things right now, and I want to talk about that a little bit, man. Tell me some of what you got going on and what you're up to these days.
Oh man, so one thing that I found out was my niche. So I'm an outdoors junkie. I've been practicing urban and bushcraft survival and going to the woods with my redneck crews and stuff like that. Pretty much for the last 15 years as I won't say a professional, but in my grown years, that level of like we go roughing it. And to answer your question is, now that I finally came out into the community with preppers and the national. Like now, I am associated with the National Preparedness Network, in which to give people an idea of what they do. We're not just running around like, oh, it's the end of the world. You need to get ready. It's yes, we do prep to that regard, but this is more like if FEMA wasn't run by the government and people needed disaster relief, if homeless people needed food, those philanthropist type of things that you don't know exist because they don't get the press. None of those people are really looking for like the credit and nothing like that. But I've been fortunate enough to go down to Sundown Town, USA, been treated like gold, exchange some knowledge. And we're ready to do some really good things together, man. We're going to have pockets of gardens through various cities. We got classes going along. And it's free to be a part of the National Preparedness Network. All you got to do is go on their website, and it gives all their information down on what they do, and it gives all their dates and classes and whatnot. And they're on it, man. It used to be the KPN. It was just Kentucky Preparedness Network, but it's grown so much with other groups and organizations. And now that I'm kind of new to it, it's going to take Hood in the Woods, which I have new content coming soon. Yeah, that's going to take that to a whole nother level, man. I want to be I won't say the Black Bear Grylls. I'll say Les Stroud or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like, so I'm out there in the woods doing my thing. Shout out to my boy Chauncey. He's my first, like, we did our first black fishing show a couple of years ago called Fishing with Griffin. And so we're just trying to link, like I told the ladies there and the people that I associate with the network, man, people surviving in the hood and the holler, and we're just trying to give them everything in between. And so that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying doing. I'm also enjoying doing some teaching to some of the ladies, which I think it might be my penance. I think this might be my penance for the sending of the women over the years. But now, for real, so now I teach young ladies on campus, on various campuses when they allow us to, about situational awareness, self-security, and self-reliance when it comes to surviving on campus, on the road, as a young woman in this society and this is culture. And so we want to, bridge that gap. I don't have any children, but for people to have children and daughters or whatnot, like that, most of the men I know that have daughters are the grizzly bear of men when we're outside of it. But when it comes to their children, they're teddy bears, man. And so that's taught me to be an uncle. That's taught me to be, a little bit more situationally inclined and dealing with certain people and certain things. And so we want to just get this information out there, man. And, people want to feel protected, and security is my other baby that I've been doing since I started in the business since '99. So I had to grow that too. I'm glad you asked.
Well, that's cool, man. That's all very important stuff and very worthwhile things to be doing with your life. And for people who are like, man, you haven't even talked about OVW. You haven't even talked about Big Zo and the legacy of brutality. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to get Hy-Zaya back here. We're going to talk about all those things and then some. But I do have to ask one more question before you go, because I had a question sent in that they asked me to ask you specifically. I'm not going to say who asked it. I think you'll figure out who it could have been whenever I do. But that question is, why was the pit the greatest locker room ever?
Oh, man. Yeah, I think I really do know where that was coming from. The pit, Evansville Coliseum, period, man, was the greatest locker room ever. And to bring up the name you just brought out, it was the shit because of Tracy Smothers and Gypsy Joe. And the reason why the pit was such a thing is like for me, I got to be down there very early because I was coattailing Kickboxer. But it wasn't just to be in a pit, it was to be in to be invited into one of the names' dressing room to just come kick it, share some herbal therapy, have some talks, learn some stuff, sit there quiet. They wouldn't even let me sit there quiet. They make sure that I was involved, and they've heard enough from whoever gave you the pass to be down there. You kind of got to do that, man, and I loved it, man. And I miss a lot of those people and a lot of those times. Yeah. Goodness, yeah, that's why. It's because of Tracy Smothers and and Gypsy Joe. I'll leave it there.
A couple of tough dudes right there. Well, I'll tell you what, man. Yeah. We'll get you back here before long, and I got a lot more to talk to you about. I want to get Kickboxer back here, and at some point, I think I want to get both of you guys on here, and let's just have a little round table discussion of old times. We might get a couple more guys. Maybe we can round up Todd Morton and maybe Tarek or somebody. Who knows? Let's have a old Mid-South.
Absolutely. I would love to hear some Tarek stories, man. Would love to hear some Tarek stories. Tarek is a lot, man. He's such an intelligent guy. But on the outside, he looks like the rocker, and you see the, of course, the influence with the rings and things and stuff like that, and the rock star life. But man, he's such an intelligent dude. He's such a humble soul and such an evolving soul. And shout out to any of the boys in the business that I come across that even gave me that to even have this type of mentality and thought process, man. It's been a hell of a ride. And excuse me, you don't make it in this game by yourself. You got a lot of people that give you stuff along the way that make you who you are. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be the amalgam, which is the ninja in the first place.
Well, man, you've definitely made it all work for you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. I've been looking forward to it for a while. Look forward to doing it again, man. So I'll be getting up with you. But again, thank you for your time, and it's been a great conversation, man.
Hey, man, thank you so much for having me on, man. You have a great one, man. I look forward to it.